Conwell, Griffin,
Here.
Griffin,
Here.
Casey,
Present.
McCormick,
Present.
Mooney.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There is only one agenda on the Finance Committee for today, and that is an update on the recycling program. And the reason that we are having it in this format at Finance Committee is because enough of our colleagues have inquired about it that I wanted to get a public hearing on this matter before the end of the year. And as we all know, when we get towards the end of the year, we're going to get a lot busier. So I want to make sure I had an open space in Finance Committee, so I wanted to use it to have more of an informational hearing. And with that, what I'd like to just kind of put as my opening remarks before I turn it over is that I think everybody that's on the council that has been involved in this issue understands that what happened in China and their refusal to take our garbage anymore, our recyclables, led to the market crash. We were in a contract that we entered at a time when the market was very good, and we're probably getting too good a deal when it ended. The issue that most of us experienced is that we or our constituents just didn't know in April when that contract expired, and people were surprised to see on the news how we were dealing with it. So I don't want to spend a lot of time rehashing that and wringing our hands about that. I kind of want to move forward. And what I want to understand is, where are we with the recycling program now? What options are being considered, and what is a timeline that our constituents can expect on the recycling program as we move into 2021? So what I'd like to do is let Chief Brown and his staff make a presentation, and then we'll open up to questions. So with that, Chief.
Good afternoon, Council President and council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm actually have a couple of folks with me. I have Terrell Cole, who's my deputy, and then Director Michael Cox is also on with us. So Terrell is actually going to be the person that we need to share the screen with, because he has the actual presentation, if you would. And for context, because I always believe in giving context, first I want to thank Council President for this opportunity to kind of provide an update. But the update is not specific to just recycling, if you would. Recall that when we sought authority to go out for an RFP, was really to do a thorough assessment and redesign of the residential solid waste and the recycling program as part and parcel of it. And so what we've been engaged or involved in doing with our consultant, who is GT Environmental, is kind of going through a process to evaluate a number of what I'll call comprehensive programs that are part and parcel of the whole waste delivery system. So if you could share the screen again, as I said, with Terrell Cole, then he can pull up the presentation and I will walk us through kind of an overview of not just the scope of work, but process and where we are in that process. And then talk as I wrap up about kind of next steps in terms of really being able to look at the deliverables and kind of figuring out or sorting out the implementation plan development, which will be part of the next move after we get through a review of the program. So again, this is an assessment and redesign of residential solid waste and recycling. If you would, go to the next slide, please, Terrell. So this work actually began in earnest, I want to say, in June to July of this year, when in fact we entered into contract with, again, GT Environmental. And one of the first things that they did was to request a lot of data and information in terms of things that we currently are doing, data points that we have. And so their initial task was really, again, to perform a comprehensive review of the Division of Waste and all its programs. And so that includes, as I said, not just solid waste, but solid waste, recycling, bulk waste pickup, commercial waste collection, and to really take a good look and review the opportunities to reduce waste. And we'll talk about one of the tools that we will ask them to give us some insight on, which is something that we'll refer to as circular economy. So again, the project's intent was really to develop a roadmap to improve the operations of the Division of Waste Collection. And the timeline for that work to be completed was September through December of this year. So we in earnest set out in the process to do discovery of information, data, and assessment for GT Environmental, with a goal of being in a position for them to present to us a draft report with some recommendations on potentially an implementation plan and development to move forward for further exploration. So again, as we look at these four particular service delivery areas, we know that if you distill it down to kind of nuts and bolts thing, this is really about people, equipment, rates, and et cetera. And understanding, as this council does, as clearly as the administration does, that there are a number of challenges in the current delivery system for each of these programs. And so kind of the discovery of that is part and parcel of what we're looking forward to. Next slide, Terrell. Okay, so as we move forward, the key or the current programs and services that were reviewed, because I want everybody to kind of understand the magnitude of what the consultant is looking at or has been looking at since their engagement with the kickoff in August. So they've been basically looking at and reviewing our current program and services, again, as it relates to curbside trash recycling, staffing and absenteeism, recycling, drop-off operations, multifamily housing collection, illegal dumping and enforcement, education, outreach, and public communication, equipment utilization and the maintenance of that equipment, ordinances for solid waste operation, and data collection and tracking. So again, they are under contract to review and look at how we have on our service delivery model, how we affect these particular disciplines, but also looking at what I'll call others that I would refer to as best in class. So similarly sized, large urban areas who have successfully implemented all or some of these particular disciplines and have done them well. And then to kind of look at the things that they do that makes their programs successful, et cetera, to look at our alignment or how far out of alignment we are, and then ask the questions about where are we out of alignment and why, and really presenting the opportunity to ask the question of, what does alignment look like for Cleveland as it relates to all these particular disciplines, and then how do we go about the process of really affecting the change required to implement those strategies. Next slide, Joe. So what you have here, which you actually can't read, but these are data forms. So these are information that the consultant used, and just by virtue of disclosure, this is information about our trash routes, our recycling, our bulk routes, and performance data. And what they did was they actually did ride-alongs with our route supervisors to not just take the data that we gave them, but to basically create their own data and information based on writing our routes, taking the inputs, doing observations, looking at how long it takes on each of the specific routes to do to accomplish the goal, and then at the end of the day, what set out rates look like. Understanding that for different parts of the city, set out rates are different. It's not uniform across the entire city. Other observations, looking at the weight, the bulk amount of weight that we actually collect on routes on a daily basis, and then looking at mileage. You know, how long are the routes? How long does it take us from the time we leave? The operation or the station where they're assigned. How long does it take them to actually get to the route, collect the waste, go to Ridge Road, and dump the waste, clean up vehicle, and get back to operations. Looking at all of those issues, and again, just saying that, you know, depending on what part of the city you're in, it's the same program, but the outputs are very different. So really understanding those issues and concerns as it relates to, again, bulk, commercial, and just the data collection for time, weight per program. Let's go to the next slide, Terrell. All right, so another one of the key factors that we have been looking at and getting information on is really what I refer to as comparable surveys that were sent out to, you know, solicit bulk waste best management options. So I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get back into near the end of the presentation. But this is really just kind of, again, as I said, looking at other similarly situated municipalities who have similar types of challenges and concerns, and realizing that GT Environmental has worked with a lot of local, regional, state, national organizations, municipalities, et cetera, to kind of reframe, repurpose how they go about doing their waste collection disciplines, if you would. So again, doing surveys with folks who do this, understanding some of the challenges they've had, how they've rectified, remedied those, looking at, as an example, for bulk waste pickup. Well, how much do they allow? How much do other municipalities allow residents to sit out? How often do they allow them to sit out? What are the other mechanisms they use for bulk pickup? I know we have a process where, you know, the first full week of the month, you know, we do bulk pickup. Well, in some communities, they do something similar to that, or they do it by schedule. So it's only done by appointment. Or as an example, we have this thing that we actually have by ordinance that basically says a resident can actually drop off at the transfer station 4 times a year for free bulk items. And so to the extent that, you know, we know how many people take advantage of that opportunity, and not just how many people, but where are these people coming from? What part of the city do they live in? And whether or not there's some utility in framing that as a strategy as opposed to our current practice. So again, just looking at how we do bulk versus how folks around the other parts of the state or around the country who are large urban areas, how they go about doing that same similar function. Let's go to the next slide, Terrell. All right, and then there's a whole slew of things that I'll call or I refer to as auxiliary services that are also being reviewed by our consultant. Again, all of these things, whether it's commercial services, special collections, whether it's tires, paper shredding, all of these various disciplines have cost centers or cost drivers for each of the program. And so understanding what that is and what's the necessary component of labor and equipment. Again, bottom line cost, does it take for each of these programs? How do other similarly situated municipalities handle these types of challenges and concerns? How effective are they at it? And then again, with respect to routes, people, equipment, and then ultimately costs, what does it cost for them to do these same similar types of services? And how do we rank in terms of how we go about doing this? And what are things that we could do to make ourselves more efficient to drive down that cost, if you would? Let's go to the next slide here. All right, so key activity. So strategic planning sessions. We had a number of those. We actually had the consultant actually had a subject matter expert sub-consultant that did a lot of this work. And so these were focus groups that they've actually already engaged and talked to in the Cleveland community. And so there were a number of things that they certainly were inquiring about in terms of recycling, bulk set out, yard waste, et cetera, and trying to get an understanding of, particularly as it relates to recycling, how well or how successful, residents felt their participation in the program. Were they an avid user? Were they occasional user? Were they a low user? Kind of understand, and then getting their understanding of what was allowed to be done as part and parcel of this process. So again, there are focus groups on that. 3 focus groups, 8 to 12 persons per focus group, and their intent was to make sure that the focus group was a diverse representation of our community, from all parts of the community, so we could get all perspectives from within our service area and take a good look at, perceptions around, participation in the program itself, communication about the program, clarity or continuity of understanding about the rules of engagement, so forth and so on. So we did that. We also met with council leadership as part of that process to get some input as well. So let's go to the next page, key activities for comparable community survey. Did I miss one, Terrell? I did, I'm sorry. Next page. So let's look at research, historical commodities and pricing. So this is specific to recycling market and analysis and the community rate studies. So again, just researching local, regional, recyclable material processors and end users, looking at and determining how attractive Cleveland metro area may be for recyclable material process end users for development. And that's where the whole discussion around circular economy begins to become a concept that we will be further exploring and taking a look at. That basically just means that if you have a particular commodity, let's say paper or plastic, and as part and parcel of the end product that you end up using or developing or manufacturing, you need a certain volume of X product, that there is the ability to enter into a relationship so such that that for that particular waste stream, that you have a destination where this product can go, and it becomes part and parcel of not only a product that can be manufactured locally, but it creates employment opportunities, business ventures, et cetera. So that is something that this consultant has been engaged with some time. Actually, we've been a little curious about it for some time now, and we've began to look into it. We're going to be working with the Office of Sustainability, really looking at an initiative to determine feasibility for this type of a strategy. Understanding, as the council president said, if you look at us back in the early years, we really went from an operation that was actually making a decent profit on recyclables. When the program first started, we went from there to kind of break even, no cost, no charge to us, to a point of doing the last round of bids that we got, being a high cost operation, which was not efficient or fundable based on what we were quoted. So again, we believe from the onset, now let me state this for the record, we believe that it's good environmental policy for recycling to be part and parcel of what we do as a service to the community. But the question becomes one of the market and where we're headed in terms of a market, and then how to right size a product for Cleveland. And so that is part and parcel of one of the key activities, again, of this program. Let's go to the next slide, Terrell. All right, so this basically is due diligence that the consultant is doing and looking at communities in and around the state, others from around the region, looking at other large urban areas that have similar types of programming, and then kind of looking at the takeaways in terms of a survey of their programs and how they are in effect doing their programs in terms of strategy, people, labor, and equipment, and cost associated with those particular elements. And coming back to us kind of with kind of the best in class, best case scenarios in terms of folks who do this well. And again, looking at what they do versus what we do, what's the gaps in those service deliveries. And if we were to make, if we had a desire to make progress in those areas, what are steps that would be taken to affect those types of outcomes, if you would. So go to the next slide, please, Terrell. All right, so as we kind of winding down here in terms of the presentation itself, the curbside program options raises just a number of questions. There are a myriad of questions associated with that. Understanding that the analysis that they are undertaking includes, but it's not limited to, a kind of a cost per household service. What does it cost per household to do this type of service? Cost per tons that are managed as part of this program. The recycling diversion percentage, which is always a very important number. And then looking at total tons, landfill versus total amount of waste that's averted from the landfill. And then, as I said, participation rates. Those are very important drivers in terms of where we're trying to go. And so the question about what percentage of households need to participate in order to have a viable program, what makes sense for us in terms of, again, having a viable program in terms of cost delivery, again, the ability to have an impact on not just the tonnage that's averted, but contamination rates and all those things that go with whether or not you have the ability to, at a point in time, either go out for bids for a contractor for a recycling program based on new parameters, new guidelines, et cetera, or you have an interested MRF who's interested in doing business with you based on some level of guarantee of the effectiveness and efficiency of your operation and what type of product you're able to provide them with such that it meets their business need or their business model. So as we move forward, as I said, we have been working at this in terms of information gathering, et cetera. We started June, July of this year. We had our kickoff meeting. We've done recycling, audits, collection route performance. As I said, they've been out without riding with our crews, et cetera. They've done analysis of our bulk waste pickup. Auxiliary services are being reviewed. Again, you saw some of the evidence of the recycling market analysis, and also looking at comparable community surveys in terms of what others are doing, and then strategies around curbside program options, which are important things to us. So we are expecting at this point a draft report based on all of this due diligence, anywhere from mid to end of December. That was the schedule that we agreed to with the contract. They are on task and on time with respect to the draft report for recommendations. Based on the draft report, we'll start the next phase of this, which becomes implementation for plan development. So they'll be making relevant recommendations based on due diligence and discussion and feedback from the city in terms of direction. They'll be setting out tasks for implementation plan development. And we expect that work will be completed in earnest as somewhere around the end of January. That's what we're hoping for. So with that said, the only other item, Mr. Cole, is just to say that, just in order to keep things working and moving forward, a lot of our inventory is original inventory. We've had it since the beginning of the waste automated waste collection program, and so we are finding that a number of these bins are literally falling apart or breaking, and so we ended up having to put an order in to get us through the end of this year, about $50,000. And we're probably expecting that we'll probably have a larger order in 2021, just again, because of useful life of the receptacles that somewhere in the area of about $250,000 outlay for that. So, Council President, to you and the committee, that's kind of the length and breadth of kind of the process that have been in for up to this point. And the fact that, as I said, we're expecting in terms of an outcome that we'll be getting a draft report somewhere between the middle of December, end of December. And based on that, we'll be setting forth a path with the consultant on what an implementation plan development strategy should look like. Again, based on responses from the city of the information that they provide us and a direction in terms of outcomes the city is interested in seeing with all the various programs that we have in terms of not just evaluation of and analysis of the issues and concerns, but solid recommendations on things that have been things that have been done, and this consultant's been involved with in right sizing and implementing good strategy for recovery program. And what I mean by recovery is reconstituting of a waste collection process program for a municipality. So,
thank you, Chief. So you're expecting a report by the end of December. Mm-hmm. Recommendations by end of January. Mm-hmm. When will residents expect a difference in their waste collection system? Like what is the implementation rough time frame? Because that leads just a second comment I want to make or question.
Well, I would answer that this way because I don't have the ability right now to kind of know what's in the draft report. Mm-hmm. So it really is a function of the draft report coming out and then us prioritizing what's in the draft report in terms of recommendations, and then agreeing to what the timelines for the implementation of each of those priorities becomes. So that is something that needs to be set. But I would say that in earnest, if we get a report and get into recommendations by the end of January, that I would expect somewhere in the middle, in mid 2021, that we start seeing some things are implemented. Because again, as an example, if we came up with a strategy for, let's say, recycling, because that's the big thing we're talking about right now. Well, we all know that in order to retool for recycling, we need to change the rules of engagement. We need to have some understanding as to what types of products are going to be recycled. We need to understand where the market is, and we need a contract, which means we'd have to go out for some type of procurement process, and you know how long that can take. So in terms of having solid recommendations and being in a rollout strategy, yeah, we can be there I would say in the second quarter of 2021. As to when they actually materializes, that's a function of the process. That's the best I can answer that at this point, kind of knowing what I know about how.
So I think I just took out of that second quarter of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the reason, and just I want to add a point of insight that wasn't really in the presentation. Many of you know that we've been in this conversation, that I had suggested just pick one thing that works. Like if we know that paper works, let's just do that. And I didn't have an opportunity to meet with a consultant, and I suggested that. And while I don't mind disclosing that when I enter that meeting, I was kind of in the mode that we're kind of consulting this to death. Let's just pick up the garbage and the recycling. But the consultants were very good and very thorough. This is more complicated than just picking up garbage. And the reason that the thing that I really took away from that meeting is that the reason we can't just do one thing or like come up with an easy solution is that, you know, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of mailings trying to educate people on how to recycle properly. And that still failed. People were still 85% of our stream was contaminated. So it probably wouldn't be wise to put in new rules only to have them change once the plan came out. So that gave me some comfort that, you know, a quick fix might complicate things more. But I did leave that meeting with some confidence that they were really looking at all different options. I mean, I never considered that maybe we can't have, you know, bulk pickup every week, but that's a model. Maybe we can have, recycling or an opt-in, but there are a lot of different models to consider. I'm as anxious for a solution as anybody else that's associated with this. Again, like I said in the beginning, there's no sense going over the past, but, you know, we're all disappointed at how the other one came to an end. But I think that we are all very anxious to get this planning process complete so that we can say to the residents of the city of Cleveland, this is how we are going to deal with this problem. Picking up garbage and now recycling is it's one of the bread and butter functions of municipal government, and we have to get it right. And we have to make sure that this implementation, whatever the plan is, that we really come up with what we did last time, for whatever reason didn't work. We really need to come up with how do we educate the public in terms of what the expectations are for both recycling and solid waste. So I'm just going to leave it at, we are very anxious for actual results and actually being able to tell people that. So, but I do appreciate the process and what we're going through. So now I want to, unless you want to respond just to the public education, Chief, or Terrell and
Council President, you're dead on, 100%. I agree with what you said. That, you know, a large part and parcel of trying to piecemeal something together is that whole strategy around the outreach and rather than confuse, let's wait until we got a good solid path and plan to move forward. The other thing that you are aware of, and I'm sure other of your colleagues are aware of as well, it's been a number of years, 20 plus years since we've actually taken a good look at our route design. And so these are all part and parcel of, you know, making a more efficient delivery system, not just for recycling, but again for waste and bulk pickup, commercial. All these things have to be retooled so that we become more efficient in the deployment of people and equipment as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, when the plan is accepted and presented to the council, I mean, I just think that we have to budget, whether it's money, whether it's a plan, the public outreach and letting people know what the rules are is going to be critical. So with that, I want to turn to my colleagues, Councilman Anthony Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The slides that were just presented, were those sent to us in advance?
Mr. Chairman, to the council, no, they were not, but I'd be happy to provide them to you.
Okay, yeah, if you can provide those, that would be helpful to get these in advance of the meeting so we can review them instead of just flashing them on the screen for that nanosecond. One of the things in the slides I recall, and one of the things that were presented in the May meeting was having public input. And there was a discussion about focus groups. And it was 3 groups from 8 to 12 people. That I would hardly call those focus groups. I mean, you know, up to 36 people in a city of 360,000 people aren't focus groups. That's just a kind of a closed gathering. Is there, and also in the contract that was provided, there was going to be public comment period. Was there any public comment period?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, at this point in time, we haven't released the product, so we're asking for comments on something we haven't released yet. That's a coming attraction.
Okay, and so how do we expand the focus groups? How do we have more people? What were the questions that were asked in the focus groups?
Again, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, questions around service delivery, frequency of delivery, set outs, limitations, frequency of things like bulk pickup, clarity of recycling, whether or not a person or a party considered themselves a significant recycler. Did they recycle occasionally, or did they have little or no interest in recycling? Really trying to understand kind of the whole universe of inputs and where residents are in terms of opinions about not just city's role, but also the residents' role. And understanding and complying, et cetera, things that might make, bring more clarity to the process. The whole issue around, the types of things that are required. As an example, bulk pickup has a limitation of 3 items. Whether or not, as an example, you're aware of the fact that you could go to Ridge Road transfer station 4 times a year and offload bulk items. If that was available or available more frequent, would you take more advantage of it? Because as you know, councilmen and others know, perhaps one of the outcomes of bulk pickup is illegal dumping that happens from time to time throughout the world. We spend a lot of time and energy with special crews that go around and pick up, 400 to 500, sites a year. So again, just trying to understand the nuances around some of those issues.
So that raises a critical point. I mean, the focus groups and community engagement was a big part of this consultant's process, and this seems way too narrow to have 24 people be our focus group. I get 24 calls a week. So I want to figure out, how do we engage more residents? How do we engage our block clubs, our community stewards, the folks that are out there every day listening to this, so that we have a good understanding of that. With a failure rate of 68% on our recycling, clearly, as the council president mentioned, that word is not getting out there as much education as we wanted. So having an understanding of this and working with our residents is a key component of this. So I'm not sure how we can expand that, but engaging our residents is getting buy-in from our residents. So I know other council members will raise that as we go on. So I'll step away from that comment. And then you said you had a meeting with council leadership to go over. One of the questions that we asked was a new timeline, an updated timeline, and I haven't seen that updated timeline yet. Is that what you went over with council leadership?
Again, when I say meeting with council leadership, it was not the administration that met with leadership. It was the consultant.
And who did the consultant meet with besides the council president?
It was myself, Phyllis, and Blaine.
Okay. And the kickoff meeting involved who?
The
It
kickoff
was
meeting- Go ahead, Terrell.
it was members of the administration, sustainability, and the division. So that was to align all the efforts necessary to get the data, feedback, and access to information and resources the consultant needed to do their assessment.
Yeah,
And then to your earlier point, Councilman, I just, the use of focus is also not necessarily something that you do in large numbers. There's opportunities for surveys, which would have more of a general, focused design. So you have to look at how the surveys would be designed. Those are things that we also are doing in collaboration with sustainability. So they're doing a large recycling survey, and that'll be another opportunity for citizen input. But a focus group, as you know, is a protracted conversation that you get down into the weeds with. And so the consultant, does that fairly regularly as a method. And that's just the method that we use here today. But by no means is that the only way that we'll engage the citizens in this process. As Chief said, when we have a design, we'll be able to get feedback and roll that out to the community and get input in as well as part of the process. Chief,
Yeah.
you think you were going to add something?
Yeah, Councilman, the other thing that you should know that as part of the due diligence, the consultant they met with all factions of the operation. So they met with the managers, they met with supervisors, they met with the rank and file employees, they rode the routes with them, asked questions. So it was a very thorough engagement so that they could get all perspectives, if you would. So.
And so in the consultant's report, under the implementation plan, it has a note. The first bullet point is City Council approved recommendation summary. So how do those recommendations come to City Council for our approval?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, again, that's a function or dependent on what we get back from the consultant. So if as a result of that, there's some new procedural, new ordinance, new legislation required to affect some rules of engagement or et cetera, there'll be a thorough vetting and an explanation of those particular things in addition to just the program itself. So there'll be a program, and then there'll be actions that are going to have to be taken either administratively or legislatively to, in effect, put in place the outcomes that are recommended to modify this program.
And so part of this, one of the other bullet points is staffing changes. So do those staffing changes come to council if they're significant, or are those internal? And how do we get notified of those?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman again, I'd rather not do hypotheticals on that. I'm not sure what the breakdown will come back in terms of what the consultant will recommend to adequately staff either the division or one of the disciplines based upon what they understand the weight or the size of that particular discipline is. And in order to efficiently handle it, they'll give us a recommendation on both people and equipment to affect a good program. And, we're going to have to make, important decisions on, what's the Cleveland program look like? What should it look like? And associated with that, how will it be administered and what will it cost? I think an honest discussion of those outcomes is something that will happen.
And so when I look at our chart, obviously with COVID, the timelines have changed. Do we have an updated Gantt chart on the timelines? I know you briefly talked about them, but this was on section F1 in the original contract, or the response rather.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, what I will ask as part of the draft response that we'll get in a couple of weeks is any update for the program and its timelines.
Okay, and so we're still stepping through then. They're still assembling their information. And I know that the things that we can't control certainly are, where can we sell, who's buying, but I think all the other components that you've talked about, including route design, those are the kind of things that can be done no matter whether we're selling or not selling. We still have to pick up trash, as the council president said, our most fundamental issue. And how often do we, pick up tires in bulk and those types of things?
That's correct.
I had asked in May about whether or not, you mentioned, Chief, that we can take stuff to Ridge Road. And the problems that we've run into at Ridge Road is, small trucks, your neighbors have commercial plates, but they won't allow them. You said you were going to take that to the executive committee and respond back. Did you ever take that to executive committee?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, please give me a moment to check my notes. There's been so many things going to that committee. I can't, to be honest with you, recall that it went, but I will make sure that I follow through them to see that if it hasn't gone through, we will revisit that issue. So
yeah, and I think it's something simple and procedural. If you have the driver's license of a person who lives at an address and they're helping a neighborhood, and that neighbor says, we're trying to do everything we can to curb dumping, and if there's no other way of delivering, I'll thank you, Mr. President. I know I've used up my time, and I can circle back and give my colleagues some answers, but look forward to an updated timeline. Look forward to seeing how we can do more. I know maybe not focus groups is what you may not want to term it, but I think engagement with we have a pretty robust CDC engagement throughout our city, and being able to have residents have input or to find out what's working and not working for them is critically important. So looking forward to that draft in either mid-December and then hopefully in January sometime. I know we have more discussions around bulk and others. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Charles Slife.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Councilman Brancatelli hit a couple of my points. But I guess I'd begin with a question, which would be for you. Now that we have an idea of when this report will be released, what the timelines are, have we begun to speculate, or can we, on how council will be involved in coming up with that implementation strategy for the new the new waste management system? We're obviously a useful resource. We're eyes on the street. We get all the calls, so I want to make sure we're engaged throughout that process, and that it's not simply just presented to us at the end of some course of action.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, your comment is noted. Again, we will, as an administration, take the output of what we get from the consultant. We'll review it, give them some feedback. Obviously have to brief the administration, and we'll be coming over to brief the council on what we got and directionally kind of what some of our thinking is, realizing that discussion doesn't mean that decisions are made. It just means that we're talking about what's on the table.
Thank you. That's very useful. And I wrote down throughout the presentation, a lot of questions about how do we run routes and It's very things that are specific, and I think it'd be a waste of this meeting to start to jump into those. But I want, definitely after reading the report, want to have the opportunity to dive deeper into some of those things. Because at the end of the day, I think we do have to come up with what does it cost the city of Cleveland to run a program. And some years, as the market changes, it will pay for parts of it or all of it. And other years, we're going to have to subsidize it. But from the environmental sustainability angle, it's something that's important that we do. To the chief, from having spoken with the consultant, that you had mentioned that we're benchmarking against a number of other cities, and during your presentation, they were listed. I got a cat in the background. Is there any sense of what cities right now are doing things well? I think this would be a useful time for myself and other members of council to kind of look into other programs and get ourselves educated on how other places are successfully managing these types of programs.
Okay, I'll defer to Mr. Cole to respond to that. He's kind of running the point on that. But yes, there are some who are not just similar size to us, but also are considered best in class, good users of programs that this consultant has worked with or knows others who have worked with. So Terrell, a couple of examples of kind of some of the best in class folks.
Well, right now, looking at Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Akron on a local level, even some newer communities that have been started. Because usually what happens is you have a high adoption, and then you look at it stabilize the program. GT has done local communities. I think the latest one they did was Cleveland Heights, so they're new to it. So quite a few similar sized cities, but also regional cities. So you have behaviors and adoption, cultural adoption that you want to take into account as part of that assessment. So I can send you a couple of the cities if you would like to do further research into that, Councilman Slife.
Yeah, I wrote them down, and if you think of others, send them over my way. But I'll probably be sitting on my phone later doing some Googling. And I guess the last point, and this is something that Councilman Brigatelli brought up also about the use of Ridge Road. I looked through the code, and the code's pretty explicit that as long as you show residency, you're able to drop off at Ridge Road. I drive a Ford Focus, so if I want to bring things, I got to borrow my brother's truck. He lives in Ottawa County. And, I know that I've had issues in the past of trying to drop stuff off with out of county plates. And I think it's just really important and feasible that we're able to work with residents and kind of meet them where they are to make that a viable city service. Because what I've heard, especially when bulk collection had been suspended, was that so many people just didn't have a realistic way to get the item to Ridge Road. So in their mind, the availability of 4 free drop-offs was of moot value to them. So I guess if that's the policy that's current, it just doesn't seem that the policy is any bearing within the actual code. So my request would be that we certainly loosen that policy immediately, and I'll base it solely on residency. And if you're able to prove residency, you can drop off.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I heard that I'll couple that with Councilman Brancatelli's request. It sounds similar, and I'll get back to the council on the outcome of that recommendation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilman Mike Flensick.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you very much, and it's been very informative listening to this. I just want to restate or maybe give some historical perspective here. I can recall in a day when the waste collectors would come in your backyard and carry the cans out to the curb, and obviously there wasn't a charge for that. So now for a single family home, we're paying $105 a year for waste collection. A 2-family paying $210 a year for waste collection, and it was the council, to my honorable colleagues, who really advocated over the years for a recycling program in the city, because we were seeing it happening in the suburbs. So we advocated for a long time, and I certainly appreciate the fact that it was implemented by the administration. We've come a long way in a whole host of areas, but then in some areas as well that we have receded again with regard to the recycling program. I got in a few minutes late. Is there a reason why the Commissioner of Waste Collection is not on this call?
Mr. Chairman of the Councilman, not that I'm aware of, other than the fact that I was asked by the council president to do an overview of the program. So that's what I'm doing as requested.
Okay, because I just want to say again, for the record, I really appreciate the assistance that Commissioner Alcantar has tried to provide to all members of City Council. He's gone above and beyond the call in so many ways. And I know he's a very knowledgeable individual with regard to waste collection and recycling. So I hope he certainly has input into this process. Looking at again, the graph, and I want to follow up on Councilman Brancatelli's comments and Councilman Slipe. Some of us have been involved in this for a very, very long time. And I would have liked, I want to go, well, first of all, let me state 24, 25 people is not enough for a survey. I think that's very clear. I think all members would tend to agree with that. But I had hoped, and I was under the belief that members of council, Mr. Chairman, and to Darnell, all members of council, whether they, if they didn't wish to, that was their right, but would have had an opportunity to be interviewed. Some of us have been engaged in this a very long time. I've been recycling and involved in it since I was a Cub Scout. Okay, I believe in it. I practice it, and I also totally agree with the comments that have been made. That a big part of our challenge here is that our residents have been a big part of the problem here. I experienced this yesterday because since the city's recycling program has been discontinued, I'm still recycling. So I took a large amount of paper and cardboard to the metro parks where they have bins for paper and cardboard, only to open up the bin to find out that someone had dumped a bunch of wood in the recycling container. And I was just appalled. I stood there and, just uttering some unpleasant verbiage about, what kind of jerk off would go over there and throw a bunch of wood in this recycling bin.
We're in a public meeting here.
Okay. But that's what they are, and throw it in this recycling bin where all of us are trying to do our part to contribute to the recycling process and help Metro Park. So we all know that there's a big problem with our own residents who do not want to comply, who contaminated the waste stream. So I'm not going to dispute that fact at all. One of the things, and what I would have said, Mr. Chairman, to a consultant had the opportunity, what I have found in my own ward, and I have watched this very closely, where it seems to have worked the best, the recycling apparatus, is where I have the largest number of single family homes and and owner-occupied residents. Mm-hmm. Where it works the least, Mr. Chairman and my honorable colleagues, where I have a high concentration of renters and absentee landlords. That's where it works, where it doesn't work well. So again, I hope in the whole course of this consultant's review that maybe there are areas where we can re-implement it, a total recycling program, and maybe we can't in other areas. That's the reality. I'm looking at some of my notes as well. I'm assuming the county, Mr. Chairman, to Darnell, the county's involved in this process is all with us as well as it pertains to discussion.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, yes, we're talking to all entities. So, and to your point on the where, 100% the same outcomes that we see here, that owner occupied is different than rental. And so all these things create dynamics in terms of what's the best outcome. How can you do this and have a high level of not just participation, but proper participation.
Okay. The issue with Ridge Road, and I want to say this to the administration. We've got a problem. People from the east side, especially the far east side, are not going to trek all the way to Ridge Road. So that's why we have this massive illegal dumping problem that we have on the east side. We have more illegal dumping, as Darnell knows, more than we've ever had before. I mean, I've seen it where I'm just like appalled by the amount of illegal dumping that we are receiving. And Sergeant Ezzo knows it because I turn those locations into him. So unless there is an east side location where people can take debris to, it's not going to happen. I mean, I go out of my way, and I'm glad to do it. I go to 55th, with paints and solvents and all that stuff, and the city's been, it's worked out well. But I'm prepared to do that. Other people are not. And so the fact of the matter is, we've got to make it more easy for folks if they wish to recycle, especially chemicals and hazardous materials. Because where I know where it's going in abandoned homes, abandoned lots, empty lots, and then unfortunately the city crews have to contend with cleaning it up, and we all know what a problem that has. The calls, I monitor my calls in the 311, and I noticed that I'd say over half the calls in the 311 are because of the black container has been damaged. That people are calling in complaining about the black container, Mr. Chairman. And I know my own son's container was damaged. It was like crushed. The sides were crushed in. Are we looking at the quality of the containers that we have purchased? And I hope as we buy new containers, they're of a better quality. I'd like to hear from the
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman. Obviously, we are going to buy materials that are rated for the task at hand. Understanding that every product has a useful life, and that we've been at this for quite a bit of time. It's a lot. Some of the containers from the early years have met or exceeded useful life, and I did comment earlier that we've spent money this year. We're actually putting up about $250,000 in the 2021 capital budget because we know that there's a large portion or a sector of the city that we're going to have to replace these receptacles in because they've exceeded useful life. So that's part of the business. You do have to retool.
But Mr. Chairman, are we looking at a better quality or sturdier?
We certainly will take that under advisement. So yes, so we will make sure that whatever we have has a rated useful life for the application that we will be using it for.
Okay. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, I believe in recycling. I've seen where it can work, and I've seen what I like to think to be the improvements over the years. But the last thing I want to touch on, when Director Dumas, Acting Chief Dumas was at the table, Finance Director, we for the budget briefing, we saw the substantial, and I do mean substantial, increase in overtime for waste collection. So I want to revert back to when the recycling program was rolled out to us in council years ago. One of the things that we were told that overtime would be substantially reduced and worker injuries would be substantially reduced as a result of implementing the CART system and the automated system with the trucks. That hasn't materialized. Would you like to comment on that? What's the problem?
Well, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, there is an attendance issue in waste collection, and I don't know that it's not related to the operations directly per se. It is it's related specifically to not injuries, because I do believe that our injuries are not as significant as have they've been historically. But we have to do something collective on the collective bargaining side to have better enforcement of work rules at the end of the day. We monitor. I've been watching attendance and waste collection for the last 5 years, and it was worse. It's not great now, but it was worse. It moved in the right direction. Of course, right now it's hard to kind of do anything in that regard, kind of given the pandemic and our ability to provide a safe working environment. while at the same time maintaining, levels of service. So it's a delicate situation right now, but we have been working very feverishly directly with the HR director's department on a strategy for improving attendance and waste collection.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear that, because it's out of whack, as you can see, and the overtime is like, wow, that is off the chart. So again, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the presentation. As Councilman Brancatelli would hope to receive it in hard copy. And again, this is something that I think the overwhelming majority of council members and our citizens feel very strongly about. I get those calls. When's the recycling program going to be back up and running? Because I have a very progressive ward. I mean, a lot of people believe in recycling in our community, but I also know, as I experienced yesterday, where it didn't work because somebody wanted to be an idiot. So at the end of the day, we have to all collectively work together. But I would hope again at some point that all members could be interviewed, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Brian Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the council president to the Director Brown, I saw one of the last slides you talked about getting new refuse cans, for this year. My question is, why do we have a hard time keeping them in stock? Like I know now when I put in requests, they said it would take a month because the city for a month has been out of black garbage cans. So why is it hard to keep those in stock? Why are we going a month without a garbage can?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I'm not sure why we're going a month without. I do know that there is a procurement process, and so we obviously need to do a better job of forecasting our levels of inventory and then giving ourselves enough lead time to procure. But again, in particular this year, we began to see a significant number of cans that were deteriorating, handles coming off, et cetera. So again, kind of knowing that we've done some stopgap on procurements, and then there's a large procurement plan for 2021 so that we have adequate inventory for cans.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. There may have been supply side issues because of COVID. Maybe there was more than anticipated given the lifespan of a can. I know several times this year when I call in for cans, the city doesn't just have some, so that you've had to wait a couple days or a week or two for the city to get cans in. But this latest time, I was told it would be 5 to 6 weeks when I called weeks ago.
Just for clarity, Councilman.
Let me finish. I had to explain to a resident, I couldn't explain to them why they have to wait 5 or 6 weeks with no garbage can. All right, go ahead.
And just for clarity, that is also the lead time to actually get those manufactured. So everything that the chief said is there, and what you said, which you kind of touched on, which was the impact on COVID. We've had some supply chain issues, and that's part of it. We've had increased break rates that kind of exceeded what was predicted. It exhausted our supply, and when we ordered, that's just the lead time that we're in. Seeing that that's the case, we started our procurement early to beef up the inventory. So we anticipate that that's going to be handled. But that you're right on the nose.
No, and that's fine. I understand. So that's going to be addressed so this doesn't keep happening, because I mean, we shouldn't have times where people, I mean, I think you agree too, people shouldn't have to wait a month to get a garbage can. So, but that'll be addressed, right?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you holding this hearing today. Chair, I'm really, this is obviously, as is many of our wards, I've been hearing about the issue of recycling from my residents. My residents are very passionate about this, as am I. So I appreciate us as a council staying on top of this as well. Chair, I would request that when that report comes out or is sent over, that we get a copy of that distributed to council so that we can review it as well. So I'd like to put in that request through the Finance Committee. And then I'm saying prior to a larger, rollout in the community, I think it's important that council is able to review that report. So Chair, again, I appreciate the update today. I was hoping we'd learn more about the road ahead, but it appears like in the next few weeks that will become clear. And hopefully in early January, we can get, or mid-January, whenever we're back from recess, we can have a hearing and to really talk about, publicly to talk about, what those recommendations are and how we move forward. Chair, one of the things I find successful, at least in the communities I represent, is, just being straight up with people. So if we've got to make changes, or if we've got to, really focus in, as you've noted, in the past, on new ways to recycle, I'm happy to work with mayor's administration on rolling that out in the community. So see us as a partner in doing that on, however we continue the recycling program here in the city of Cleveland, understanding how important it is. Chair, just a couple thoughts, and a lot of my questions have been asked by my colleagues. The one point I wanted to highlight, I represent, every one of us has multifamily in our ward. I've got a big chunk in downtown Cleveland. I'm happy to hear the chief discuss multifamily recycling. This has been something that I've heard loud and clear from my downtown residents, that they want to see a recycling program in downtown, in our multifamily residences. And I know currently the law says that if you're over 4 units, you're kind of on your own for recycling. I think that we need to relook at that as a city, our downtown residents, or, whether it's other areas of the city that have, multifamily, are living, breathing, tax-paying residents. And I think they should have access to recycling too. So I think whatever program we look at moving forward, number one, I'm appreciative, Chair, that we're discussing multifamily, and I think that's got to be a part of it. We've got tens of thousands of residents in the city of Cleveland that live in buildings that are, over 4 units. So wanted to put a pin in that. The other thing too, Chair, that we've discussed in these conversations is the first R that we always forget about, and that is reducing. So, I hope that in this plan, we're looking at ways to reduce the amount that we bring into our homes and then the output. Again, that's to me the most effective way to reduce waste, is to not bring it in your home. So how we can move forward with that. The other thing too, obviously we've talked about outreach and education, how important that is. 2 other points, Mr. Chairman, Chair, to the chief. Are we looking at smart city technology when it comes to an approach? Specifically, I'm thinking about how other cities have utilized sensors in their public garbage cans to best provide data and to educate us on when and how frequently routes need to get made. Chair, I receive a ton of complaints about overflowing public recycling and garbage cans. So are we looking at technology as well and how that can impact this program?
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, the short answer is yes. So in that regard, also with respect to route and route optimization, et cetera. So yes.
Great. I know Terrell is a big nerd like me on technology, so I'm happy he's a part of that conversation. Really, there's a lot of cities that are doing a lot with that, and so I want to note that. Chairman, the other question I've got, Chair, to the chief, I've been approached by organizations in Cleveland, Rust Belt Riders and others who work on composting. Have we looked at solutions for food waste, and could that possibly include partnerships with organizations outside of municipal government that are operating here in Cleveland?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, the short answer is yes to that again. Food waste is actually one of the bullets that we are looking at and looking for opportunities. So we'll be working with our consultant as well as sustainability and other opportunities, again, to optimize systems so that everything is not based on a landfill or a collection. So.
Great. And I know that, Chair, food waste is a huge component of our waste stream. So if we're able to significantly reduce that, we can make a big difference on that. Again, Chair, I appreciate the conversation today. Let's hope that, in the short term, we can bring this committee back again to get kind of next step options. As you noted, Mr. President, our residents want to know, when is this coming back and what does it look like? And we get those calls, tweets, texts. every single day. So I look forward over the next month or so to get more answers on the specifics of how recycling will be rolled back out in Cleveland. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you having this hearing today. I just want to reiterate a couple of things. One, I want to reiterate Councilman Polensik's feelings on our Commissioner of Waste. I don't know why he's not here today. However, he's been overly responsive and helpful whenever we have any issues regarding waste collection around the city. One of the things, Mr. President, when the recycling went away that we kept hearing about was that we pay for this, we pay for this. Now we're not, we're paying for, a service that we're not getting. So, Mr. President, to the chief, the monthly waste collection fee, that is for waste collection. It's not for recycling, correct?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, actually it pays for a portion of waste collection. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So,
But not specifically, it's waste collection, as you said, not just recycling.
okay, so is recycling thrown into that fee?
Again, yes, it is, but again, it only covers a portion of the waste collection operation. So,
All right, and Mr. President, to the chief, is there any way we could get a breakdown then of the money that's been collected for waste management and where it's being spent and how it's being spent?
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, certainly we could do that. We can provide that. I was trying to remember, Mr. Chairman. I believe my colleague, Mr. Wood, had given a number in terms of what percentage of the actual waste collection fee that contributes to it. And I believe the number was 40%, but I'll check that and then get back to you on what percentage of the actual waste collection fee that contribution from the residents covers.
Okay, and then Mr. President, to the chief, can we, since we're not having recycling, and if we'll just say it's 40% of whatever the waste collection, can we find out where that money has been, how it's been allocated, since we're not recycling?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, the short answer is there is still cost of operation for running the waste collection operation. So it would go towards deferring that a portion of that cost. The rest of it obviously is getting paid by the general fund. So
Right. And then I another question, Mr. President, to the chief. You'd put in the presentation that you just allocated $50,000 for roll carts. Is that for this year?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, yeah, that's a purchase we're making right now.
Okay.
And then we're budgeting again another $250,000 for 2021.
Coming out of the capital, correct?
That's correct.
For 2021. All right. Well, Mr. President, to the chief, if that $50,000 was just allocated now, we've known for quite some time that we've been out of roll carts. And just because you put it in the presentation, what has been taking so long for us to catch up on the roll carts?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we've made several procurements during the course of this year for roll carts. That's 50,000 is just the latest procurement to tie us over until we can make the allocation for the capital budget this year. So we can make sure that we have some additional inventory above what we have now.
Okay, and Mr. President, to the chief, do you know how many roll carts 50,000 will get us? Will it get us enough to backfill whatever still needs to be filled with individuals who still don't have carts and get us through to the 2021 budget?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, yes, the plan is for it to cover anything that is not covered by our current inventory and allow us to have some inventory up until a point in time that we have the authority for the $250,000 procurement.
Okay, and then if we could just get a number on how many roll carts, and I'm assuming they're the black and the blue ones, or we're just going with the black?
It's just inventory. So whichever we need is what we'll buy.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Councilwoman Jenny Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. For those I haven't met, I'm Jenny Spencer, new council member for Ward 15.
Good afternoon.
And thank you. And through the chairman to Chief Brown and to Mr. Cole, a couple of questions. I wanted to follow up on Councilman McCormick's question about the waste receptacles that I think of them as the concrete waste receptacles that tend to be on street corners. They seem to be placed based off of special request. It seems like for capacity reasons, the city is reluctant to place them because of difficulty emptying them. And often those requests come through the council member's office to have those placed. However, they do not seem to be part of the regular collection route. Emptying of those receptacles seems to be complaint based. Certainly when they're overflowing, the council office will get, a complaint, or the division of waste will get a complaint, and then that's how it proceeds. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate what Councilman McCormick stated, which is greater clarity on the policy for those public waste receptacles would be very critical, because those are very, very frequent requests that folks want those on their street corner or by a bus stop, especially.
All right, thank you for that question, and we'll be sure to address that as part of the report that we that we'll be preparing and reporting back to council on. I will take the particular direct question on the program or the process for scheduling the emptying of that portion, that selected service, so that we have a direct response or a direct set of recommendations on how to better provide that outcome.
Terrific. And I do have one more question, which is I would like to, through the chairman again to Chief Brown, request clarity on the messaging that we are to give to residents right now, given that we are awaiting the report and then may not see any implementation until the second quarter of 2021. Residents, and I, as a resident, I continue to observe there are two sets of collection vehicles that come through our neighborhoods. There's the regular solid waste, and I believe there's still the recycling.
That's correct.
Vehicles that come through our neighborhoods. And so residents are still, for those who are kind of, who are aware of the challenges of this recycling program, they just don't get it. They don't understand why we're still putting out blue bins. And I understand there's a public education component. So I just would like to get clarity on, what is the soundbite, for lack of a better word, on what the city would like residents to do behavior-wise while we are waiting changes to the system.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman. So what the administration would like and would request the public to continue to do is to use both of those receptacles appropriately, so that solid waste would go into the solid waste receptacle, and that you would continue to put your recycling in. There is some value, in our opinion, in encouraging people to continue the proper behavior or lifestyle as it relates to the waste stream, so that when we start up again, we don't have to start from scratch with the whole public education piece of this. The other part of that is, if we were to do something different, that would require a whole different schema of routing for trucks and equipment. So even though technically stuff is going to be going to the same place, if the volume of waste that you put, if I just had one truck out there, kind of going up and down, picking up both, that truck would end up in Ridge Road, offloading and then going back onto the route. It's much simpler for route.
I've ever heard.
Huh?
It's the longest soundbite I've ever heard.
I'm just trying to be clear, Council. Trying to be clear.
Okay. So the recommendation is to continue separating.
That's correct.
Until a new plan, but there's
until further notice. Until further notice, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Kevin Conwell. Yep, yep. There you go.
Can you
Yes.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
I want to go back to the behavior that Councilwoman just got finished narrating. And I had a conversation earlier in the year, Mr. President. You know, I stopped by the director's offices and have conversations with them. And I talked with Terrell earlier this year, and he was narrating some of the same issues and concerns that Mike Polisic was talking about, how people, they were just dumping in the recycle bins, wood, dead animals, all kind of things that, I mean, I can't even mention on the, on Zoom right now. And so my question to the chair, to Cole, are we going to use the same person that managed it last time? And you mentioned, I think it was Slife, when he wanted to know what cities are using this, and you talked about lessons learned. That's what you talked about. But you said you would give him a list of the cities. I need to know, when you give us a report, what did we learn? How are we going to deal with behavior to let people know that you don't put dead animals or wood that Councilmember Mike Polisic just narrated earlier into these cycle bins? How are we going to protect that? To the chair, to Cole.
Cool.
What was that, Councilman?
Well, the question I asked you, you and I had a conversation back, I think it was in January or February, and we were talking about behavior. And the behavior that you narrated to me was what Councilmember Mike Polisic said, that people were not, they were just dumping anything into the recycle bins. How are we going to manage this the next time we implement this program? And who is going to manage it? And I hope not the same person. And I yield.
Yeah, Council President, to the councilman, that's a big part of the consultant's report. So the lack of compliance is one of those data points that they're taking into consideration, and the amount of that and the types of violations that we see in the program and the rules that we have in place that allow us to do enforcement on the recycle side. We have a lot of existing rules in the ordinance of how we manage the solid waste side, but currently the recycling program is a voluntary program. So it has to have rules that allow you to enforce things a particular way. So the consultant's taking all that information and they're going to recommend a program and strategies and even updates to ordinances that allow us to manage the program in its entirety. There are some things from a communication standpoint that you would not think that you would have to try and educate people on what not to do.
That.
Right. Some things you can't predict. It's just part of it, but how you respond is the main piece to it. And just the way that these things happen, you find out after it's already in the truck. You don't know which house contributed to it specifically. So a big part of this is around the compliance and the consultant taking that information and helping us design a program that becomes easier to manage and easier for us to communicate to people about what's expected. And also easier to communicate success. I think success is a momentum thing that once we're doing well, we can communicate what's doing well, it just breeds more and more momentum and more success.
You know, when you give us the framework, put that in there on how you're going to monitor and control behavior. I mean, that you just narrated to us, because monitoring and controlling was one of the, was the hardest thing to do in the last program. Because you narrated that to me. Also, when you sent the cities, I think it was Councilmember Slife that asked for what cities that we looked at lessons learned. Was that Councilmember Slife that asked that question?
Yeah, it was best practices, Councilman.
That's lessons learned.
Yeah, so some cities have some best practice, getting some strong outcomes in terms of the program design and elements that they've included that help them achieve a certain level of success. So yeah, we'll be able to put that down as a note, lessons learned as part of the report. And again, to your point, in terms of how we plan on monitoring and enforcing the correct behavior, how we're going to manage. Absolutely.
And don't just send me cities through the chair to call what cities use best practices. Give me some teeth to it, like the evaluation processes. Let us see that with the lessons learned. Don't just send me cities. That's not good. We need to know, what happened and how did they correct it, all those kind of things. By you just telling me cities, that doesn't tell me anything through the chair to Mr. Cole.
Yeah,
Terrell.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we won't get that until we get the reports back from the consultant at either mid or late December. So when we get that response, we can respond to that.
And through the chair to the chief in the cities, okay, you guys will respond to that, because I don't just want to see cities and who's using the program, this program. We want to see that they have any issues or concerns. And then you know what? I need to see also, I'm going to be breaking into something. Give me an issue log also on there, Chief. The issue log meaning that the council members just ask you about issues and concerns. Here's our issues and concerns, and this is how we're going to address city council members and their residents' issues and concerns. By you doing a survey analysis and you only give me a random sample of 24 to 25 people, that's not good. That's not good at all. So we need an issue log, or we say issues and concerns in there, and how we're going to deal with the issues and concerns that Councilmember Mike Pulisic, Councilmember Brian Casey, Councilmember Mooney narrated to you, sir, through the chair. And Terrell Cole, he knows how to do it. We were in class together. We were in graduate school. So he knows. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because you're going to have issues going through here, and we're going to ask questions, and that way we'll know ahead of time, and that shows that you were listening to us at this finance committee meeting. And I yield.
Thank you. Thank you. So make sure the councilman gets all that information once it's available, not just by city, but all of the different data points that he asked for.
Mr. President, they should, because city council members, sometimes we ask the same questions over and over again because we're not getting, they're not responding to us. You'll hear Councilmember Brian Casey ask a question over and over again, and they don't respond to us. And if we had, if they were to give us an issue log, it shows that they're listening to us. And they should be listening to us. We're funders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. For follow-up, Anthony Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to kind of reiterate a point. I know we've talked about education and rollout and the contamination rate being at 68%. And certainly part of the contamination rate, not the dead animals, and as Pulisic said, that hopefully all you find in the carts are dead animals, but in the the changing of the rules over time. So you can have egg cartons, you're going to have milk cartons, then that goes away. You can't have plastic bags. You can't have plastic bags. So it's been all over the place on how recycling has changed over time. So our contamination rate isn't just because people were negligent. It's just also an understanding and education of what was going on. And I would disagree with, not disagree. I just a point to Councilwoman Spencer. I've told my residents just totally bag recycling. Our failure rate was so high. Let's not keep, that's Einstein's definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over with different results, expecting different results. Just pretend we have no recycling. So when we roll this out, we're rolling out fresh. Here's where we're starting from, and we're not having people continue to do the bad habits that had a failure rate already. Take your cardboard, your paper, your cans outside of your containers to the churches, the recycling centers outside. But I'm not pretending that we have recycling just to make folks feel good about it. And I still don't agree with sending 2 trucks down the street. I understand that whole demand issue. We can route our traffic differently and not wear and tear our trucks, and also use extra manpower and overtime up until we have a plan to roll back out again. So that's a different discussion. But I want to pick up on what Councilman Pulisic had stated about having a consultant meet with council members. Mr. President, I would like to recommend that we set up a session with the consultant and the council members and their EAs, so we can have that session, so we can talk about what we've been hearing on the street and what's been going on. just so we can broaden that focus group a little bit more. And also in community development, the community development director has set up a wonderful executive group of CDC directors, and maybe a session with the CDC directors also would be at hand, also give them some insight on what we're dealing with. So that would be two specific recommendations, that we have some outreach to the council members. Zoom calls are easy to do. We can have that discussion and meet with the EAs and meet with council members and be able to have them hear what we're dealing with our residents and what we're hearing every day.
Thank you very much, Councilman. All right, I appreciate everybody's being here today and your participation.
Mr. President, are we going to get a response from the administration on whether or not we can have the consultant meet with council?
Chief, do you want to respond to that?
Mr. President, to the councilman, it is under my notes for an action item, so I will engage the consult and see what they recommend in terms of how to facilitate that type of discussion. So Zoom call may be very appropriate. So I'll ask them to give me some dates and times on how that could occur.
All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we will see everybody Wednesday at 10 o'clock for Committee of the Whole. And thank you for your time and your participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.